one of my main goals as Secretary General will be to normalize our relationship with the OSCE. I would like to create synergies with our partners in Vienna, in Warsaw, and in other institutions. This does not mean that we have to renounce to what are our flagships, to what we always have said in all our annual declarations. We have strong positions, we have to defend them, but I would like also to stretch our arm, build bridges with our other organizations, because the main point is that it's not just about us or them, it's about what the OSCE delivers, what the OSCE can deliver on the ground. And so my main objective is not just that the OSCE PA flag is up in the sky, but that the OSCE flag is contributing to have good deliveries on the ground in all the activities where we work. In the relation with the external partners, I have reached out immediately to the OSCE. We've had challenges in the past with some institutions of the OSCE. My task here was to try to reach out to the OSCE Secretariat, to the permanent delegations in Vienna, to the ODIHR, to the High Commissioner for National Minorities, and basically to put together all our efforts, all our energies, all our capabilities to focus on what are the real issues that the OSCE needs to tackle. The real issues is not our respective visibilities, the real issues is the problems on the ground. And so if there are issues of migration, terrorism, conflicts, or elections and things that we have to deal with, I think that what is important is that the Parliamentary Assembly works together with other institutions of the OSCE and with other partners, because I've reached out also to the NATO PA, to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, and working together with them to tackle the real issues on the ground. So not in a competitive, let's say, asset, but more like working in a cooperative fashion with our partners. On the external side, I have tried to reach out to the ODIHR, to the OSCE governmental side, to the other institutions, because I have one clear point in mind, is that I think those who have established the OSCE, those our founding fathers in 1975, they thought there are sets of values that we have to defend and there are sets of problems in the OSCE regions. And so let's put together a number of institutions which are all tools to address those problems. So rather than focusing on our self-promotion or our institutional self-promotion, we should try to put all the assets that we have, and here we have 323 members of parliament, it's the representatives of 1 billion people. This is our asset that we offer to the solutions of the problems in the OSCE regions and to defense of the values that the OSCE has. So I believe very much in working in synergies with our partners, and I will continue to work in this direction, of course, if this is the will of the members of parliament. I'm here to serve you. Part of my efforts has been an ongoing activity in trying to reach out to our partners in the OSCE, but also with NATO PA, Council of Europe, European Parliament. I must say that, as you've seen, the cooperation with the the Secretariat in Vienna is excellent. This is not only thanks to our good personal relationship, but it's also because we've come to the conclusion that the point is not just cooperation for cooperation. I mean, nobody is against cooperation, but you have to cooperate because it's better and it delivers better result on some specific action. And you have taken my talking point about Turkey, but this is exactly an example of how we can cooperate. So there is an issue, the coup d'etat in Turkey. There is an activity that the OSCE wants to carry out, and then the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, the OSCE Secretariat, the ODIHR, the freedom of the media, consult each other, talk to each other, don't coordinate each other. There is nobody who is in a superior position of coordinating the other. It's just individuals who have responsibility, respective responsibilities and mandates, which use common sense, discuss, what do you think, shall we do this, shall we do that, and then carry out a message to the authorities in Turkey, which is a message which is somehow shared with other institutions of the OSCE. And for us it was a great pleasure to have President Mutonen deliver a message to Turkey on behalf of the Secretary General who was invited, but also on behalf of the ODIHR by suggesting, for example, the use of trial monitors in the aftermath of the coup d'etat. So this was a typical asset that the organization has, and it's seated in the ODIHR, but we don't shy away by simply suggesting to the Turks to use a tool that exists in the ODIHR. We don't need to put an OSCE PA flag on every activity that we do. We also use the OSCE PA vehicle to promote activities of the organization. This is, I think, is what also is contained in Canerva's paper. This is what I have received as kind of your feedback. This is what you want the Parliamentary Assembly to do, is also to promote the activities and the acquis of the OSCE in these countries. On election observation, for years, we've had a long struggle. I mean, we can be very open here with the ODIHR. I will be very concise in saying that the struggle was between some who were for a very strict orthodox interpretation of this famous Copenhagen Agreement of 1997, which basically said the Parliamentary Assembly is in charge, the ODIHR does some technical work, but then the Parliamentary Assembly comes in, the ODIHR might not even speak in a press conference, and our special coordinator takes the floor and takes away. So this was the orthodox implementation of this cooperation agreement. Then there's been for 17 years a practice which has been established, of course, because the ODIHR from 1997 has developed a greater infrastructure, has hired the new professionals, has developed the methodology. So the established practice in 17 years has been that we had a struggle with the ODIHR for 3-4 days before an election and in the day before. Then we would come to an agreement, thanks to the efforts that maybe Ambassador Montella or others who were on the field would manage to come with the ODIHR, because we said it's more important to find an agreement rather than coming with two different statements. And then the 3 weeks after an election, we would have demarches to the CIO, to other institutions, complaining about the fact that there was not a strict adherence to this famous cooperation agreement. So de facto, there was always an agreement at the end of the day, but before and after, there was lots of sore feelings, lots of fights, lots of disagreements on how things have been conducted. Also here, we've used common sense. Michael Link, the director of ODIHR, myself, the Secretary General of NATO PA, of Council of Europe, we have all sat together. I've invited them in Helsingør, in Copenhagen, and we have had 2 days, a very informal discussion on how we can improve the final product of election observation. What is important in election observation is that we make good recommendations for the country where we observe the elections, and that the citizens of that country see that the international community is united in sending a message to the authorities and to the citizens. So we thought, this is the priority. It's not the priority that my institution, rather than the one that you are temporarily leading, has a greater visibility or less. So we thought, let's discuss on how we can make this product better, more efficient, and so that when we go to a country, instead of arguing on who speaks first and who speaks second, because this is already regulated. It's clear that the Parliamentary Assembly has a leading role because there is an agreement that the chairman in office appoints a leading member, appoints the president, or a leading member of the Assembly as special coordinator. So this is undisputed. Nobody is trying to take this away from the Parliamentary Assembly. So as this is undisputed, then why don't we just get rid of all these tensions and difficulties with the ODIHR and focus on what we are there for? This has been totally welcome, of course, by the ODIHR, by the other Parliamentary Assembly. Somehow, so they were a bit surprised that this would come from us. But I think this is the spirit that I got by talking to many of you from July last year. You've always told me, look, Roberto, let us move on and let us focus on trying to deliver concrete messages in these missions rather than always being engaged in demarching this or this other organization with our complaints. One aspect of elections, it's been outlined by Kent Arsted, that we are developing now with very good cooperation with the ODIHR, is the follow-up. So we've always done just the observation, pre-electoral visits. Now we are trying to reinforce also the aspect of follow-up, mainly with the presentation of the ODIHR final report, and this is presented to the authorities normally 3-4 months after, and it depends. We're not going in every country, but where we think it's important to go and also give a kind of a political blessing of the document presented by the ODIHR head of mission. Also here I would like to commend Director Link. He is no longer going to be the director of the ODIHR. He has decided to end his term. But thanks to him and thanks to the fact that he's a former politician, so he understands the needs of a body like this. And I must say that the relations have improved. Of course, I think it's not up to me to say whether we have contributed from the International Secretariat, but I think a lot of credit also goes to Michael Link and to the fact that he was much more forthcoming towards the Parliamentary Assembly. And now, I mean, it's no longer news, so I don't need to repeat it every time, but the cooperation is excellent, and we hope that with the new director of ODIHR, this cooperation will continue to be excellent. In terms of cooperation with the OSCE, I thank very much Ambassador Beckers for the words you've said. Indeed, the cooperation is as good as it gets. We have never had this strong level of cooperation with the OSCE structures in Vienna, with the ODIHR. The basic principle that we applied here is that rather than having a continuous conflict or a continuous polemic with the institutions of the OSCE, what we should do is to put all our assets together and focus on why this OSCE is there. I mean, what's the point of the OSCE? We have to focus on what are the issues on the ground. The challenge that we have, terrorism, migration, child trafficking, all the issues that we have debated over these last 5 days. So the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly works together with the rest of the institutions to deliver concrete results on the ground. This is a mature parliamentary assembly that calls on the governmental side to deliver concrete results on the ground. By talking on the cooperation, I would like to also spend a word to recognize the great legacy that Ambassador Lamberto Zanier leaves to the organization. He has been a sincere advocate of the work of parliamentarians. He has shown a great respect for this assembly. He has on his own decided to meet members of parliament wherever he visited in participating states. This has been a great change in attitude from the governmental side, and therefore a great word of gratitude to Lamberto Zanier, and a great word of gratitude also to Michael Link, the departing director of the ODIHR. It is also thanks to him, to his fact that he is also a former politician, so he understands politician well, that the cooperation on election monitoring is dramatically increased, and it's now, we have always talked about this relationship with the ODIHR, now it's sort of superseded in its history now. The relations is good, so hopefully we will no longer have this issue on the agenda in the next meetings. And this cooperation is now beyond the simple cordiality or friendship that we can have with the other OSCE institutions. We have to have a cooperation focused on what is the purpose of this cooperation. And the focus is always on the end users of this product, the people of the OSCE countries. So our cooperation is not a simple cordiality and exchange of good educational niceties. I think this is news also because in the past this was not the case, but I think now we are in a moment where we need to move beyond that and focus on what we can deliver through this cooperation. So a cooperation based on the end users.
When we talk about elections, we've always discussed in the past the relationship with our international partners. I have already discussed this in the past. Things are going extremely well. We have excellent cooperation with ODIHR. We have excellent cooperation with the other parliamentary assemblies. Again, we have used the methodology. What is it that we do it for? Result-oriented. We're trying to do this exercise of data observation to deliver good statements, useful statements for participants. So we have to get rid of all institutional personalities, arguments or clashes, but focus on what is the final result. Excellent cooperation with the ODIHR, excellent cooperation with the ODIHR director who came to visit us in Copenhagen. The ODIHR methodology, the methodology that we apply to observe elections is the best show and tell we have. We have to treasure it, we have to strengthen it, we have to make sure that it's credible, that nobody can attack it. So if there are sometimes also clear flaws, challenges, we as parliamentary assembly must make sure that this methodology becomes stronger, becomes impeccable, so that nobody can challenge the credibility of our efforts as election observers.
Last year in Minsk, we had 4 empty chairs. We had 4 signs for the OSCE Secretariat, the OSCE Director, the Freedom of the Media, the High Commissioner for National Minorities, but there were no people. The OSCE didn't have any individuals identified for these positions. Now the OSCE has identified 4 strong, motivated, authoritative leaders. You've heard Thomas Greminger, Lamberto Zanier, the High Commissioner for National Minorities, Harlem Desir, the Freedom of Media, and ODIHR Director, the successor of Michael Link, Gisla Dottir. Those 4 leaders of the OSCE have given the OSCE a new boost, and the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly in this framework has worked very well, has cooperated with all these institutions, and cooperation has been discussed here many times. What we have found as a key for this cooperation is a cooperation based on the final result. It's not just a cooperation to be friendly with each other or to be kind to each other, this is normal, but it's a cooperation focused on how we can best deliver for the end users of the OSCE product. Those you represent. This is what the OSCE is about. It's not about self-aggrandizing 4 different institutions, but it's about putting together all these assets, all the differences of these institutions, and put them to work for the benefits of the OSCE citizens from Vancouver to Vladivostok, those you represent. So I think this is an excellent sign of cooperation within the international framework. Thank you very much. I'd like to congratulate Christine and your team for putting together this seminar. This is very interesting. There are all the stakeholders in the room, so congratulations in also the presence that you've managed to have. On the code of conduct, we are also at the Parliamentary Assembly trying to have a more stringent, more forceful code of conduct. Of course, a code of conduct is needed, maybe a common code of conduct possibly, to the extent possible, is recommended. But I would like to bring the attention of the audience to an issue. I have been in elections now for 20 years, and the final product of what we produce in an election observation mission is the preliminary statement of conclusions and the final report, normally a document that is given to the parliamentary dimension 48 hours before an election. Now, I have been in many election observation missions, and the impact that members of parliament actually have on the final product of an election observation mission, the final report and the preliminary statement, is maybe 5%, maybe 10% in some cases. You know, you negotiate, you discuss, you have an interested discussion around the table, but the real impact on the direction of the statement is 10%. Now, it is obviously very important that we put in a very stringent code of conduct for the parliamentary dimension of this exercise, but we should also look at the other aspect, the 90% of actually goes into these papers. Normally the 90% of statements is written by either the deputy head of mission, the analysts, the experts, and these are people who have had a long experience. Many of them are around the table here, and we have this assumption. We want to have a stringent code of conduct for parliamentarians because we assume that they might be biased, that they might have friends, that they might be subject to some pressure from their political friends in the country where they observe. So it's absolutely necessary to make sure that there is a code of conduct that avoids that. But also the experts are human beings. I do not buy the argument that they are just totally neutral. I think that many experts, and I know some, have strong political opinions of the countries where they go. They have, obviously, they hate the guts of dictators like we all do. Okay. They have strong political opinions about the countries where they observe. They also sign a code of conduct. Now, the level of accountability of members of parliament is very clear. They are public figures. They have reports like the caviar diplomacy. If they misbehave, their reputation is on the line. The level of accountability of those who produce the 90% of the final products is,
can you wrap up
yes, I'm concluding, is left to few individuals who decide to recruit the experts, the long-term observers, the deputy head of missions and heads of missions. So please take these comments not as a polemic, not as an accusation, because the seminar is called Future of International Observation Mission. So I want to contribute to something I really deeply care about, which is international observation. And I think the future for a successful exercise, independent, impartial, goes through also the mechanisms of recruitment of those who influence 90% of the final product. So we must work very much on how and who and what is the mechanism of recruitment of the 90% of the final product of the election observation. Thank you. For the first time, our relationship with the ODIHR and all the other partners on the elections are excellent. We have invited ODIHR colleagues to come to Copenhagen. We've done informal briefings, informal brainstormings with them. The relationship is excellent. Our leadership role is not disputed, and we work excellent. And to produce the final reports that we come up with are now more focused, and I think they better service the interest of the participating states where we observe. Nacho Sanchez-Amor, you mentioned the European Parliament efforts to create its own body for election observation. And as you know, I'm going to convene at the end of September here in Copenhagen another brainstorming exercise with European Parliament, Council of Europe, NATO PA, our traditional partners in election observation missions. My advice would be to the European Parliament is not to create this body. We have the ODIHR. It's already a good setting there. There is a good methodology in place. There are many things that need to fine-tune, and I'm happy that Matteo Mecacci, the new director of the ODIHR, is also going to participate very soon into a similar meeting in Brussels. I think we can work with the tools that we have and fine-tune the tools that we have. And I think the approach that we should have as civil servants of international organizations is not to try to replicate the tools that exist and not to try to put an institutional or corporate hat on every tool that exists, but try to improve it. So if something already exists, and it exists now in the midst of the ODIHR, then let's try to make that tool as strong as possible. And the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly has a history of challenges, let's say, with the ODIHR, but now we work very closely together also with the European Parliament and the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly, NATO PA. So I'm a great advocate of cooperation of all these institutions, but keeping in mind what it is cooperation for, because of course we all cooperate, we all try to be very nice with each other and polite with each other, but I think what is important is that we think of what are the tools that already exist and how they can best deliver for the end users of those products, regardless of who has the lead on what project or not. So I would definitely recommend that we strengthen the ODIHR, and of course, the European Parliament keeps the lead in all the election observations that you do outside of the OSCE region.